Regarding the claim by British intelligence that Russia is sowing chaos on the streets of Britain,
Listen to me. Thank you for reminding me about this part. Well, this is complete nonsense. You see, what is happening on the streets of some European cities is the result of the domestic policies of these countries. But you and I know, I have already said this, the European economy is balancing on the brink of recession, and the leading economies of the Eurozone are in recession, in fact. If there is some small growth, 0.5%, it will be due to the South, where there is no such serious production due to real estate, the tourism industry, and so on. But are we to blame for this? What do we have to do with it? Western countries, European ones, just went and refused our energy resources. Well, we are not refusing. By the way, there is still one pipeline under the Baltic Sea, Nord Stream 2. What does it cost the German authorities? Just press a button and everything starts. But they do not do this for political reasons. And their most important partner, I don't know for what reasons, created conditions when an entire sector of the German economy is moving to the USA, because the authorities there create more complementary conditions for business. And primary energy resources there are 3 times cheaper, in my opinion, or even 4 times cheaper than in Europe. Different tax conditions, targeted actions. But what do we have to do with it? This causes a corresponding reaction because the living standards of people are falling. This is obvious. These are the statistics of the European countries themselves. But what do we have to do with it? What are you saying, really? This is, as we say, an attempt to shift the blame from the sick to the healthy and to avoid responsibility for wrong decisions in the economic sphere and in the sphere of domestic policy. In the economic sphere now, it seems to me for objective experts this is an obvious thing, but many in Europe and in other countries in the States have abused and are still trying to abuse the environmental agenda and the increase in temperature on the planet. They are running ahead without sufficient grounds in terms of technological development. They are closing everything that is connected with nuclear energy. They are closing everything that is connected with coal generation. It used to be, right? They are closing everything that is connected with hydrocarbons in general. Has anyone calculated? Will Africa be able to do without these types of hydrocarbons or not? No. African countries and some other countries in developing markets are being forced to use modern and perhaps even effective tools and technologies from the point of view of preserving the environment. But they cannot buy them. There is no money. Well, give them money then. And no one gives them money. But they are forcing tools. I believe that these are tools of neocolonialism when they bring these countries down and make them again depend on Western technologies and loans. The loans are given on terrible terms. The loans are impossible to repay. This is another tool of neocolonialism. Therefore, we must first of all look at the results of the Western countries' policies in the areas of economics, finance, and domestic policy. And people, of course, are afraid of the aggravation of the international situation connected with the escalation in various conflict zones, both in the Middle East and in Ukraine. But we are not the ones who are engaged in this escalation. Those who are on the other side always play for the aggravation. Well, we are ready for this escalation. Think about whether those countries that are doing this are ready.
Arish Mohammed, correspondent for the Moscow bureau of Sky News Arabia, United Arab Emirates. Vladimir Vladimirovich, please tell me, there are a number of reports that Moscow may provide support to Iran in the event of an Israeli attack. What is your attitude to such reports? Do they reflect the essence of things? Is Russia even considering assistance at this stage of escalation in the region?
Firstly, we are very concerned about what is happening in the region. As for assistance to Iran, firstly, we are in contact with the Iranian leadership, of course, in close contact, and we see our role in creating conditions for settling the situation, and first of all, by searching for mutual compromises. It seems to me that this is possible. No one in the region, really, and my conversations now on the sidelines of the BRICS summit show, no one in the region wants the conflict to expand and some big war. No one.
Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, I am Tursumbek Akun. I came from Kyrgyzstan, the chairman of the Human Rights Organization of Kyrgyzstan, the coordinator of the Congress on Human Rights in Central Asia. I represent not only Kyrgyzstan, but also the public of the countries of Central Asia. First of all, I congratulate you on holding the BRICS summit at a high level. Like other people around the world, I do not envy you that you are the president of the Russian Federation. This is the heaviest burden, but no matter how hard it is, you bear it with honor. The West has wanted to separate Russia from the rest of the world for about 3 years, but today this goal has ended in complete fiasco. This is confirmed by the results of the BRICS summit, where your political and state position was supported by about 35 countries, and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and other international organizations came to this summit. Today, on Russian soil in Kazan, historical events took place, where the multipolar world has already gained the upper hand. The unipolar world led by the United States is gradually losing its significance, giving up its positions. At the meeting of the leaders of the BRICS Plus format, complex issues of the Middle East were discussed. Despite the UN resolution, Israel does not obey and openly ignores UN decisions, and even declared the UN Secretary General persona non grata. Then Iran launched a massive attack on Israel, and now Israel is announcing retaliatory actions. According to open sources, it is preparing to bomb Iran's oil and nuclear facilities. I have a question and a suggestion. The U.S. military is on duty in the Persian Gulf to help Israel. Should the BRICS member states under the Russian chairmanship prevent the unilateral domination of the U.S., Israel, and give a worthy response to their actions if they start a war against other states? Not only should the U.S. warships be on duty off the coast of the Persian Gulf, but at the same time Russian and other BRICS ships should be on duty to help Iran, Palestine, and Lebanon. Only then will the tyranny of the U.S. and Israel be stopped. And the second question, dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, the United States of America and the West are set to once again denigrate you, saying that Russian President Putin is refusing to negotiate. Before Zelensky's Swiss summit, you announced your demands, your conditions, but they did not agree. Have your demands remained in the same form? I believe you did not refuse to negotiate.
A colleague just asked about our relations with Iran, our readiness to provide assistance, and so on. First, regarding the situation in the Middle East. I said it today and I want to repeat it here. I think that there is no person on earth whose heart does not bleed when he looks at what is happening in Gaza. More than 40,000 people have died, and these are mainly women and children. Therefore, our assessment is known here. It is given how to get out of the situation. We are also talking about this. This can only be done by eliminating the causes. And the main reason is the absence of a full-fledged state of Palestine. It is necessary to implement all decisions of the Security Council in this area. But we must work with all participants in the process and not allow the conflict to escalate or worsen under any circumstances. In particular, we must work with Israel, which admittedly did face a terrorist attack in October last year. Therefore, we must very calmly and carefully analyze the situation, in no case condone disproportionate responses to these terrorist acts, but work with everyone and achieve a reduction in the level of confrontation, including on the Lebanese track. It seems to me that in general this is possible, but we must act very carefully. I am simply, frankly, afraid to say an unnecessary word, because every careless word can harm this process. But in general, I want to thank you for raising this topic because it is extremely important. As for the negotiations with Ukraine, I have already spoken about this many times. We are grateful to the President of Turkey, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who once provided us with a platform for negotiations with the Ukrainian delegation. During this negotiation process at the end of 2022, we came to a possible document, a draft peace agreement. The Ukrainian delegation initialed it, which means it was satisfied with everything, and then suddenly refused. Recently, the Turkish side, Mr. Erdogan's assistant, called straight from New York and said that there are new proposals that they are asking to consider regarding negotiations. I agreed. I said, fine, we agree. The next day, the head of the Kiev regime suddenly declared that they are not going to conduct any negotiations with us. We told the Turks, guys, thank you, of course, for your participation, but first sort it out with your clients. Then whether they want it or not, let them say so directly. As far as I know, what was heard in Parliament again was not a proposal for peace, but some other plan, a victory plan. Well, fine. As for the victory, last year, when trying to carry out so-called counter-offensive operations, the losses, I think, amounted to about 16,000 people. These are sanitary and irretrievable. Now, in the last month and a bit, in the Kursk direction, I think there have already been 26,000 losses. 26,000, also sanitary and irretrievable. And last year, during the counteroffensive, we lost, I think, I'm afraid to lie, something like 18,000 or something, equipment. Now it's almost 1,000 more. True, we lost almost 100 fewer tanks. But it seems to me that they were simply used less because there are simply fewer of them in the Ukrainian army. But better than naming such figures, it would be better, of course, based on the realities and relying on what is happening on the ground, to sit down at the negotiating table and conduct these negotiations. But the leaders of the Kiev regime do not want to. Including, I think, because the beginning of peace negotiations would lead to the need to lift martial law, and immediately after that it would be necessary to hold presidential elections. Apparently, they are not ready yet. The ball is in their court.